Liaquat Merchant, thank you very much for honoring me with this great award and in this great company. I have followed Mr. Imran. What I consider my political party to be doing is what Mr. Imran has consistently done. I'll come back to that later. And then Mr. Sherbaz Bazari was the first politician who I approached when I started the party 15 years ago. I approached him to join Tehreek-e-Insaf, but for various reasons, Mr. Bazari felt that he gave me a lot of encouragement, but he felt that, he had had enough of politics. Mr. Adib Rizvi, Dr. Adib Rizvi, is someone who I have heard so much about. And in trying to build this hospital and what I had to go through, I know what he must have had to go through in doing what he has done. So I have the greatest respect and admiration for you. And I'm very pleased that I met him here. Now about Jinnah, the great Qaid. Liaquat Merchant said that this is a non-political forum. Now, how can you talk about Jinnah on one stage and talk about non-political on another? My inspiration, the only politician I have ever looked up to, the only politician, I'm talking about Pakistan, the only one I have ever admired, if I have to look for inspiration, because he went through desperate times. Because I have, in my 15 years, remember 15 years in opposition in Pakistan. There's not, how many people have been in opposition for 15 years in Pakistan? So, opposition in a country where there is no rule of law, where there is no protection of human rights, where until very recently, the judiciary was part of the executive. So you got no relief from the courts. So it's been a difficult struggle. And so I know what it must have been, what Mr. Jinnah must have felt, because obviously the odds were much greater, much harder than me. What he had to, he was up against giants. I mean, there are no political adversaries like Nehru and Gandhi. Maulana Abdul Azad, these were great politicians, great freedom fighters. They all thought they were struggling, they had different concepts of freedom, but they were all great men. It's not what can be said of the current politicians. I can't say that I'm up against any great adversaries. I can't say that I respect any of their ideologies. I mean, in the case of Mr. Jinnah, he was, their points of view differed, but they respected each other, because it's like when you are on the sports field, you're playing a great team, which in my time was the great West Indies. So we tried our best to beat them, but you respected your opponents. I'm afraid I don't have much respect for my current opponents. But I can say one thing. Mr. Jinnah's politics is what is needed in Pakistan. If we have to save ourselves, the only way is to go back to the vision of our founding fathers, which was to have a state where there was rule of law and where there was welfare. A state that was humane. A humane state, by that you mean, forget about rights of human beings. Even the rights of animals should be protected in this country. Rights, when you talk about justice, you don't talk about men, women, minorities. You talk about the weak. The weak need laws. The weak need to be protected from the strong. That's why you need justice. The weak need justice. And justice does not differentiate between humans. So what the Pakistan we want, when we talk about Jinnah's Pakistan, is a Pakistan that has justice. And a Pakistan that has a welfare state, where the state takes responsibility of its weak. My inspiration of a welfare state, I did not know what a welfare state was until I went to England as an 18-year-old. And for the first time, I noticed what a welfare state was. Here were state hospitals, and by the way, Shaukat Khanum was an inspiration when I took my mother to a state hospital. And I saw her being treated, and me paying for her treatment. And on the next bed was a national health patient being treated free. And the nurses did not differentiate between them. Neither did the doctors. Hence the policy in Shaukat Khanum that we do not differentiate between paying patients and the patients who are being treated free. Because I realized that that's what humanity is. This VIP culture, the biggest curse of Pakistan, where we treat humans differently. Where the ruling elite lives off the people, the taxes of the common man, and where the poor subsidize the rich, as opposed to in Europe, where the rich subsidize the poor. And that's how you have a welfare state. So, first time I saw a welfare state was in England. When I went to the Scandinavian countries, I never understood really what a true welfare state was. Where every human being was treated with dignity and respect, and the state took responsibility. This didn't matter their religion, their caste, their color, their creed. And then justice. I first understood what rule of law was when I went to university. And I heard these English students always talking, whenever you came up against police or anything, this is my right. I never heard this in Pakistan, this is my right. Because I was, it was martial law at the time when I left Pakistan. So we have, for Pakistan to achieve its potential, and Pakistan has tremendous potential. Because I have seen the potential of Pakistanis in two areas. One was cricket. I realized that in Pakistan, we competed internationally, not because of the system, despite the system. Talent came up in Pakistan despite the system. And such was the talent here that we managed to become one of the best teams in world cricket, despite having no proper domestic cricket structure. We were competing with teams like Australia, which have the best. It's like a student from a government school which has no teachers, which has no facilities, competing with, say, the Karachi Grammar School. And yet the talent in this country was so much that we could compete. Even a better example was of Jahangir Khan and Jan Sher Khan. There were more squash courts in Oxford University than the whole of Pakistan. And yet you produce two world champions who reigned for 10 years each. Similarly, when you see Pakistanis abroad, and especially in the US, Pakistanis who've joined my party, the young Pakistanis, they make us proud. Given a level playing field, they have excelled in every field. Shaukat Khanum is run by doctors, all of them who've come back from abroad, taken a huge salary cut. And yet, if you provide them the right environment, conditions, meritocracy, you will find that Pakistanis are always willing to come back, bring their brains and their capital back to this country. And the other thing I noticed was when building the Shaukat Khanum Cancer Hospital, I ran out of money. Suddenly, the same donors who I hit over and over again, and Dr. Adeep Rizvi would appreciate this, there's so much people can give money. So we still needed a lot of money to open the hospital, and so I decided to do a camp, to go out in the public, because we needed $4 million to open the hospital in December '94. And unless we had $4 million, we were already incurring costs. The doctors were in place. The hospital, you had to pay the salaries, and then you had to pay for equipment. So to open the hospital, we needed $4 million, and I ran out of steam. I had gone everywhere in the world. Wherever there were Pakistanis, I reached them to raise funds. And so come October, I ran out of steam. So someone suggested, why not just go into the streets of Pakistan and collect money? We did an experiment in a town called Daska. So just went there, announced that I'm coming to collect money in the streets. And in about 2 hours, I collected about 10 lakh rupees. That's when I started this campaign in 6 cities, in a 6-week campaign in 29 cities of Pakistan. So I would be in this box, in this open van. We would announce in the morning. In the morning, I would hit the schools. I realized my best fundraisers were school children. I would let them loose on their parents. Tell them that, if they get enough money from their parents, I'll give them a cricket bat. So the school children created a revolution, and then I would hit the streets, the markets. And those 6 weeks transformed me. Because when I went into these little streets, I found the poorest of poor giving money whatever they had. I saw chhabri-walas, tea boys, drivers, anyone I used to watch. I would be sitting in this open van and I would watch people, and the moment they would see this van come into, they would give whatever they had. And there was one particular incident I remember. I came back home exhausted one day, collecting money all day. I mean, I was quite fit those days. I just finished playing cricket. But I used to, just by collecting notes all morning, I used to get exhausted. I got so used to collecting notes that one day a lady pulled out, she wanted an autograph. And she pulled out looking for a book or a pen. She pulled out 1,000 rupees, which I quickly grabbed. And I suddenly realized that she wasn't donating it to the hospital. But anyway, I ended up with this, I went home and this guy, there are 4 guys waiting for me. That Imran Sahab, we've collected some money for you. I looked at them and I thought, how much could they have collected? They looked very poor, in dhotis and everything. So I said, listen, don't worry, I'll build the hospital without your money. They insisted, no, they said, you've got to come. And they insisted, so they had the car there, so I got into the Toyota. It wasn't very far that drove. The car almost stopped twice on the way. Exhausted, me cursing them, thinking, well, what a... They took me in there, they said, we've collected the money, you just have to come and pick up the money. So they took me through these little alleyways, open sewage systems, smelly streets. And me said, okay, how far? It's just around the corner. Anyway, finally they ended up taking me to a small mosque. So now I stand there, I said, where's the money? And while I'm asking him, I suddenly see one man on the mic saying, Imran is here, Imran Sahab aa gaye, jisne paise dene aake masjid mein paise de de. So those days I wasn't in politics, so I didn't have that much control over my temper. Now I have. I really was resisting, doing something thank God I didn't do by slap. And suddenly I saw the mosque crowded. It was immediately filled up. And it was the poorest of the poor. I looked at these people and I genuinely felt, first I felt terrible for being angry, and secondly, I looked at them and I said, look, you need this money, don't worry, I'll be able to collect money from the rich people. They all insisted in contributing to the cancer hospital. And in the 6-week campaign, the target was 4 million. I collected $5 million. So what I'm trying to say is that what gave me hope and why I'm in politics is because I actually believe that this country has tremendous potential. There's a hell of a lot of talent in this country. Unfortunately, most of it we pushed out of this country because of lack of merit and where criminals are ruling the country. But secondly, the people are extremely generous. What is our biggest problem? We have a huge deficit in our expenditure and revenues. We cannot collect enough money to develop our human resource. We cannot spend money on our population to either educate them or give them or care for their health or give them justice. Now, in my opinion, if you have a government which people trust, and a government that does not live in these big palaces, PM houses, all these colonial symbols, because remember the colonials who built these governor houses and palaces, in their own country the Prime Minister lived in tiny 10 Downing Street. I don't know whether you remember Tony Blair had an extra child, he had to build an extra room in 10 Downing Street. So we have to, it's because they respect the taxpayers' money. When David Cameron went to the United States for an official visit, he had just announced an austerity campaign because they had a bit of a deficit. Now remember, Britain's GDP is almost equal to the entire Muslim world. 50 Muslim countries' GDP is equal to Britain. So just because he had announced an austerity campaign, he went in a business class British Airways business class ticket he got. And when he went to Washington, he did not book into an expensive top suite of a big hotel. He stayed in the room in the British Embassy. Compare that to how our rulers live. And compared to what they give in turn to the poor people in this country. The majority of people deprived of education, the lowest literacy rate in the whole of subcontinent. 90% doesn't have a sewage system. If you look at our hospitals, government hospitals, look at the state. No justice to majority of the population. And yet the small upper strata are ruling elite, the way they spend money and the way they live off the people. So in my opinion, the moment you have a government which people trust, which has a genuine austerity campaign, lives very simple lives, no VIP culture, money spent on the people. Today the tax GDP ratio in Pakistan is 9%, the lowest in the world. In my opinion, Pakistan can easily raise more taxes even than India, which is 18%. We can raise 20% tax to GDP ratio. The moment we do that, we become a solvent country. But we have to have a leadership with people trust. And here's someone, just in one last year, Shaukat Khanum, Namal University and the floods, I led campaigns which collected 4 billion rupees. 4 billion rupees. So finally I finish, again thank everyone, I thank Liaquat, I thank you very much for inviting me here, but I finish by saying that while it is the worst of times, I also think it's the best of times. I see a big change coming in Pakistan. A change that brought an independent justice system. Ordinary people went out in the streets, and I was part of the campaign, and I'm very proud that I was part of that campaign, which is the beginning, which started the beginning of change in Pakistan, where we today have a Supreme Court, which we have faith that will protect our rights. Despite all attempts by our government to sabotage it, I do not think that they will be able to put the genie back in the bottle. Secondly, we have a very vibrant media. Hardly any Muslim country has a media which raises so much political awareness as our media does in Pakistan. Thirdly, what we need now is an independent election commission. Tehreek-e-Insaf has already gone to the Supreme Court, and I was very pleased that the Chief Justice immediately took the case. Where I don't know how many of you realize that the 2008 election, out of 80 million registered voters, 37 million were fake voters. 45% was fake vote. And another 35 million vote wasn't even registered. So here we have a government which says we have a mandate by just 10 million votes. They're sitting there with 10 million votes, and out of that, half should be fake. So now the Supreme Court has taken up that case.